I really can't express how much of an honor this is. So this is from the heart. Thank you very much. Want to explain something to you, and then I want to ask you to engage in an imagination game with me. This client walked into my office, never met him, walks in, and he falls on the floor. And so I leap up, and I'm like, oh my God, can I help you? And he goes, don't worry, this happens all the time. He wasn't kidding. And so this client got named the falling down man. Understandably, because he would do this. He would just suddenly, or he'd be sitting in the chair, and then he would start moving backwards and everything, and like all of these amazing things. And so inside, I'm like going, oh, good, extra crunchy, crispy fun, you know, because this one is challenging. And so we talked. He'd been to the best doctors everywhere. He had spent thousands upon thousands of dollars. And they all basically said, and this is a clinical term, CCFCP, which is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So, and he said, can you help me? And I said, no, but I'm going to charge you a lot of money. And because I have what I call an unfortunate face, which is when if I'm not smiling, I look like I'm about to scream or cry. And so I put on my unfortunate face, and he believed me for a nanosecond, and then I smiled. And I said, of course I can help you. I'm that good. You know, Kevin Hogan told me that. So, and he goes, who? So the falling down man and I worked together on and off, and I worked with his wife too, who had severe depression. And the beautiful thing about this, and I want you all to kind of lock this one in, they made changes so naturally, they didn't even notice it. This is an outcome I want to promise to you, if you allow me today to have any healing, healthy influence. Your changes will happen so naturally that you won't even notice it until somebody points it out. This guy started doing stuff. Literally, he would start to walk forward, and he would end up walking backwards. He would cover one eye, and he could walk forwards for a little while, and then all of a sudden, he'd start falling down or tilting. He worked in a machine shop. He almost impaled himself on a variety of dangerous tools. He would hit his knees. It was becoming impossible for him to work, and he had to. So I said the same thing to him. I said, all I need is your permission to have a healing influence. I'll take care of the rest. And he agreed, yes. He came in one day. He was walking better, doing better, everything else, and he came in one day, and I said, how are you? And he goes, great, I've been practicing. And I said, really? What, the piano? And he goes, no, I'd take the shotgun and put it in my mouth and make sure I could reach the trigger. And I said, that's awesome, have a seat. And close your eyes. And I had this obstinate view that he would absolutely become healed. Because this was a man who often walked very close to the rope. And he ended up healing. One time he was in session, and I did this particular bit that just came to me. I think I'm guided. I choose to believe that because that gets me and the ego out of the way. And all of a sudden, and I spoke this one thing that came to me, and this sigh of relief that came out of him. He was in such deep trance. Anybody here never been in trance before? Never seen a hypnotist? Okay. You know you're in trance when you say that, right? Just saying. So, and he began and continued making all of these wonderful changes so that his life turned around. His wife also became a happier person, and they had plenty of, and this is important, they had plenty of valid reasons to be unhappy. So all I'm asking is, right now, just do me a favor, let your eyes close. I'm still here, I'm not going anywhere. let your eyes close. I want you to imagine that I'm drawing, and I don't draw well, so I'll just pretend draw. I'm going to draw 3 padlocks right next to each other on this whiteboard. Maybe when you open your eyes, you see them. Maybe you'll see them when your eyes are wide shut. I don't know which. But there's 3 padlocks, and the first one is labeled personal. The second one is labeled professional. And since we're in Vegas, the third one is labeled wild card. Now, one or more of these locks, with your permission only today, one of them or more will open. It will unlock. So if that's okay, just tell yourself, yeah, that's fine. It seems like a fun game to do. Either a personal lock will come unlocked, a professional lock will unlock, or even a wild card lock inside of you, something you've been meaning to get free from, to solve, to figure out. Maybe that will unlock. So before you open your eyes and pretend to see 3 padlocks here, just ask yourself, what color are they? Does it have like a purple face, yellow and green, or is it green, yellow, and purple? So whatever color is there, but let your imagination play with this, because my goal for this afternoon is to share a number of things with you, and at least one of them will help you find the missing number for at least one lock. So with that in mind, thank you very much. Let your eyes open up, stare at the whiteboard for a moment, and just let your imagination take care of the rest. Question number 1, how would you know if a personal, professional, or wild card lock suddenly open? How would you know? Don't need an answer, because you'll know when you know. But to get an answer, you have to ask the question. And that brings me to the first topic that we're going to cover, and it's one of my favorite topics. It's called Deadly Questions, How to Spot and Defeat Them. Live, deadly questions, how to spot them and defeat them. So, the first question is, what is a deadly question? Deadly question is a question you ask yourself, either of yourself or others, or of events, and a deadly question can only have a deadly answer. How come my real estate clients, mortgage clients, can't get their stuff in sooner? And the only logical, there are 2 answers to that, right? And they're both exactly the same, just different. The first one is, but they can get their stuff in on time. Here's the second answer. Well, here's why they can't. It's because there were marshmallows that triangulated inside a yellow submarine over Purple Mountain's majesty. And that's why. So, and the next obvious question, and maybe not so obvious, how are those 2 the same? They're both crazy answers. The question presupposes the answer. How come they can't? The only logical, non-insane answer is they can't do that, and there's a reason why. One of the most common questions we ask ourselves with a different ending, how come I can't? Now add your problem, and this is what I'd like you to do, please. And actually, let's refer to it as your solution. Write down the question, how come I can't? This is yours, and it's private. You won't need to share it. Put down the question you want an answer to. How come I can't get along with my mother-in-law? Oh, I should tell you about that one.
Oh, she's a nice lady.
Oh, no, but this blonde rig came into my office one day, and she goes, I want to tell you I'm schizophrenic. And I said, well, that's good. I like a woman who has a lot of personality. And she goes, I have lots of them. But she asked me, she said, can you hypnotize me to love my mother-in-law? And I said, don't you have a crack habit instead? That's easier. But by the way, she ended up, and the moral to this story, she had a change in perspective. She sat in front of my desk, and she was relaying information to me, and I relayed something back to her slightly differently. And honest to God, she sat there, went into trance for 2 minutes. And she came out of trance, eyes wide open, and she said, I don't believe it. And that was it, problem solved. The funny part about this, or one of the funny parts, where my office is, there's a restroom not far away. And sometimes you can hear the loo flush. I was married to a Brit. And I thought to myself when I first moved in, I'm like, oh my God, how come they can't make it quieter? Deadly question. Well, they can't because they're waiting for you to annoy. So, right? We have those days. So I said, okay, how can I use this to my advantage? So several months later, enter blonde rig. She comes in, we talk, and there's like 3 flushes in a row. And I said, as you hear the sound of my voice, and as you imagine that somehow you can hear the sound of flushing, your unconscious is flushing away all of that emotional doo-doo that you've collected. So, right? Try not to laugh. That's ridiculous. She came in the next session. She said, you know what? My husband, when he notices I'm starting to tweak, he tells me to go flush the toilet. Because it's an anchor. An anchor is where you have a certain response associated with a certain stimulus. When we ask ourselves a deadly question, we've already anchored in, we are already expecting a deadly response. When we ask ourselves a deadly question, how come I can't? How come I won't? How come they can't? How come they won't? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with them? We've already anchored the response. Any other response we get, other than the one we expect, will literally fall on deaf ears. My brother was talking to me one day, and I knew he wasn't listening, and I said, by the way, Bri, I set a goat on fire today. He goes, oh, that's good, blah, 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 blah. And he just kept motoring along. And I said, you're not listening, are you? He goes, what? So, a deadly question. And I guarantee you can find at least 5 in your daily life that are somehow constraining you. Imagine they're like that manacle with the ball, and you're trying to get somewhere and something's holding you back, and there is a deadly question involved. So if you ask yourself, why can't I? The only reasonable response is, I can't because. Why won't they treat me with respect? Why won't she treat me courteously? Why won't he just do the things I ask him to do? So the question instead is, how can I? You have to change a deadly question into a possibility question. And this is going to make sense because I'll explain the formula of the mind, and you'll see just how powerful this really is. So if you want more out of yourself or your clients, look for those deadly questions.
Would you say change the deadly question into?
A possibility question. Instead of why can't I, how can I? How come I can't stop smoking? Well, because you're on fire. That would be a logical answer. Reminds me of an old joke. Honey, put the cat out. Why? Is it on fire? So a possibility question. How can I? Why won't they is another deadly question that keeps us mired in negative energy. Why won't they? How come they won't? Sometimes you can't reframe a deadly question into a possibility question. Not possible. So what's your next step? A lifetime of bitterness? I have a favorite saying, bitter and twisted, table for one. So, because I would rather laugh than cry. By the way, there are this many kinds of people in the world. Those who understand binary and those who don't. That's very select. All right, here's the other one. There's 3 kinds of people in the world. Those who can count and those who can't. So, what do you have to do with that kind of humor? Practice acceptance, right? That's really bad, but I'm not going to throw anything at them yet. So, if you can't frame it into a possibility question, you have to frame it into an acceptance statement. Because listen, this is all about you. I'm dead serious. because you're the one in control of your happiness, your well-being, everything else. And if what somebody or something is doing or happening, and there's no way to frame it into a possibility, a positive possibility, then we go for acceptance. That look. Am I in trouble? So, one of the things, and this is called growth work, when you have 5 or 10 minutes, sit down and make a list of your own deadly questions. And ask yourself, are you willing to accept that for the rest of your life? I am 55 years young. I have an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old. It's kind of hard to get old when you have children that young. Tired is different. So I prefer to keep myself mentally flexible, limber, all of that stuff. And I'm already preparing the question, how much for bail? So, just in case. I don't know how much time I have left is the point to this. None of us do, obviously. So it is incumbent upon us to get the most that we can. Rather than waiting on Sunday Isle, where the ship never does come in, we can be, here now. So make your list of questions. It might help you find out there's some stuff you've been waiting on an answer for, and you suddenly go, it's really not that important. So just wanted to share that little bit of thought with you. Deadly questions can only give you deadly answers. Positive possibility questions, or acceptance questions. How can I be okay with this? Acceptance doesn't mean rolling over and condoning. It does not mean that. We've all been through tough times. But it just dawned on me, it's like, well, at a certain point, what's going to change? Well, the situation was not going to change. So I couldn't feel bad enough to make it better. That was not possible. You cannot have enough resentment, and we'll get to that shortly, to fix a situation. So then the question is, what can I get out of this situation rather than what is it going to take out of me? That's a deadly question. Do you know what this is going to do to me? Do you have any idea? We might not say it exactly like that, but if you think about it, you've said it to yourself in that many words. This is going to take a piece of my heart that I'll never get back. Does it have to? Must it? Really? When we're dead, how important is it? And this is something I do with my clients called end of days perspective. You're floating above your coffin, and you're looking back over your timeline, and you ask yourself, was it really worthwhile getting that upset over those things? Was it really worthwhile? It's like, well, maybe not. So, let's enjoy, right? So what can I get out of this situation? And I asked myself that when I was going through this particularly troubling time, and dear Kev did the most active listening of all. He just listened, which is so difficult. Thank you. And the thing of it is the situation I have now, rather than clinging to righteous recrimination, I clung to the optimistic hope that I can make something good out of a very bad situation. And I'm stubborn. And now I have an amazingly good situation. And it's because if you want better answers in life, you have to ask better questions. You must. If you've got a feeling inside that's uncomfortable, unresolved, so on and so forth, if you want better answers, ask better questions. I'm reminded of a tombstone. I told you I was sick. Right? That's how some people want to end it. Well, more power to them. Not me.
How'd that work out?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, God, I had a student 2.5 years from Iowa real grizzled guy. And he would tell a story about somebody doing something boneheaded, and then he'd cock his head and go, "And how's that working for you, Sparky?" Oh my God. First time I saw this guy, he pulls up in this massive red pickup truck. Huge. And so the deadly questions, I wonder how much of an a-hole this guy's going to be. You know, how hard is it? And then he gets out, and he's this tall, but he's full of dynamite. Starts telling me stories about how he beat people up, including his kids, ran people off the road, on and on and on. And I'm thinking, this is going to be a long 2.5 years. And then I started asking the reframing questions. How can I change this? So this brings me to number 2, class exercise that has nothing to do with exercise. Let your eyes close, please. Allow your eyes to relax closed. What I'd like you to do, imagine there's a scale of 0 to 10 on the annoyance scale. 10 is where if there was a weapon nearby, that person would be history. Okay? We're not going that far. Pick somebody on a scale of possibly 0 to 7. Somebody who, when you think about this person, it could have been a clerk. It could have been somebody at an airport, like what happened to me, not this time, but last time, where they were really annoying. And for some reason, they just stick in your head as an annoyance, right? So what I'd like you to do is think of this person's face. You don't have to see it, because your unconscious is seeing everything in detail. So here's question number 1. Do you give yourself permission to be freed from the annoyance you feel toward this person? Do you give yourself permission? It's not giving them permission to not be annoying, right? It's you giving yourself. So take a moment, and if you're willing to just let go of this bit of annoyance in your life, then let your head gently nod yes. It's like, yeah, I'm done being annoyed with this person. Sure. And this is a technique, I guarantee you can use it in many other situations. So what I'd like you to do is think of that person's face, and then imagine that they have ostrich feathers sticking. We're on that theme. So now they have ostrich feathers kind of just glued willy-nilly to all parts of their face. And now imagine this person has very long eyelashes, very long eyelashes. And then imagine they have Mickey Mouse eyes, those big, red, saucer-like eyes, you know. And now imagine that this person has a Mickey Mouse voice, and whatever it was they said to you, they're saying it in that voice. Run this through your mind. You're getting it. That's the desired effect. So this is a very brief, but if you work with this, highly instructional way to change your feelings. Change your feelings right now in a constructive way, in a way that improves your life. Because no matter how bad we feel about what somebody did to us, it's not going to change what they did, and it's not going to change them. So let this sink in for a moment, and then when you're done, just let your eyes open up, and a bad face reframe, or just changing, or the Mickey Mouse face. If you think of somebody who's annoying you, turn them into Mickey Mouse, including their voice. But here's the catch. You're doing it, aren't you? You're like, yeah, that's kind of dumb, but it works. But think about it. If you don't laugh when you think about it, when you make an honest effort, it's because you still want to hold on to that resentment. And we're going to talk about resentment very shortly, because resentment is super glue to the very feelings and thoughts and behaviors that we don't want. Somebody once said resentment is like burning down your house to get rid of bugs in the attic. It doesn't work so well. I invite you to try this if somebody or something is troubling you. Change their voice, change their face, but give yourself distinct permission to feel better. Doesn't mean you're letting them off the hook. It means they no longer have you on the hook. Resentment. When you think about it, it is somebody give me a definition of resentment. What is it to you, Steve?
Well, you're angry about something that happened in the past.
Angry about something that...
You resent an action someone took or action you took or, something that happened.
And what's interesting, yes, I like that. Also, in the future. There's a thing called future resentment.
Yeah, taxes.
Yeah. Yeah, or the inability to pay said taxes. But when you think about it, it's an anger towards someone or something, either in the past, the present, or even in the future. Ressentir, to feel again. To have those feelings again. So when we resent something, we are keeping ourselves locked in on the problem rather than finding a solution. If it's a business issue, so long as we continue to focus on what went wrong, what could go wrong, we're pretty much going to keep getting that. Resentment saps our energy. If you find yourself unusually fatigued frequently, there's probably anger involved, provided you've had a proper medical checkup. If you find yourself emotionally drained, where you just don't have the resources that you used to deal with people, things, or problems, there's probably resentment going on of some sort. If you find it hard or difficult to either decrease or eliminate unhealthy habits, resentment is involved because it is superglue to addictions. Resentment against who? Great question, Ken. Thank you. Who would you think? Who could we have resentment against?
Yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody and everybody, including yourself.
Yep. And for those of you who are religiously inclined, God. And when I work with clients of faith, we eventually get to that. And I'll ask them, because that's a huge roadblock in their lives. Because they feel horrifying guilt. I can't be angry at God. God's perfect, but I'm really pissed. So something to think about, something to work with. Again, these are all just adding to the combinations you can try out on one of those locks. So you have to ask yourself, to get rid of resentment, to get rid of this negative force, what do you do? How do you get out from under it? And again, you have to ask yourself, what am I getting out of this? And initially the answer is nothing but pain. What can I get out of this situation? But I said, what can I get out of this? And this is something that I share with all of my clients. My job, I get to serve you, and this is absolutely where I come from. I get to serve you. In order that you are becoming a better friend to yourself. And I really want you to take that message home. What would it be like inside of you tomorrow if you suddenly felt like your relationship with yourself is better than it is today? What is it like to be a better friend to yourself? And that's my mission, my calling for the people that come to see me. Because I know if they're in front of me, they're supposed to be there, and that I will help them. Which is why I've had some remarkable cases, where like seemingly impossible stuff has happened. And I don't take responsibility for it, by the way, because that's crazy. Because my clients, they do all the work. So you're a better friend to yourself tomorrow. How do you know? How do you know? Are you getting along better with your thoughts? Are you getting along better with your emotions? Are you getting along better with your body? If you have a better relationship with yourself, how do you know? This is some more growth work to do, because how we relate to ourselves influences how we do in so many other areas of our lives. And our relationship with ourselves also determines how much resiliency we have, how much resourcefulness we have. So again, personal, professional, wild card. If you get along better with yourself, which one of these locks will fall open for you?